And just a little bit more in the background to give you perspective as to how I approach internal audit. When I joined Tyco in 2007, that's when I entered internal audit, moved from Ohio to the East Coast for a while. Before then, maybe half of my career was audit and finance. The other half was nothing in accounting, nothing in finance, nothing in auditing. It was, as the CFO of Tyco called it, real jobs. They're all joking with us there, but it just is what gives me the perspective that I have on internal audit as a business, as an advisory function. So I do approach it maybe a little bit differently. And really what I talk about is, for those that attended the previous session, which I attended on purpose, and it was really very much aligned with what we're about to talk about again, so somewhat repetitive with apologies, but it's meant to be a tactical guide as to how to do what we heard about in the previous session. That's kind of how I think about it. So it's meant to be a guide, a very tactical guide, workable guide, things that I do personally as a leader of an internal audit function to make it, one, very agile, and two, and maybe more importantly, but they go together, very relevant. And I really added that to the title about a year ago when I had my first real one-on-one with the CEO of Cooper about a year into it. And I said, hey, Brad, any feedback for me and the group? How do you think we're doing? He said, you're very relevant. And I can't think of a better compliment from a CEO but to say you're a relevant internal audit function. So we'll talk about both of these things, and they go together. So we'll talk about what I'm talking about and what I'm not talking about. We'll do that very quickly. And 10 things that I do as an internal audit leader to drive a more agile and relevant internal audit function. And then we'll talk about some good and the bad and the ugly of that, frankly. And I thought it was you that said some self-volunteered and left. We had that as well. We'll talk about that. This is not for everyone, absolutely.
Maybe they're coming back.
Welcome. So we're talking about agile as a function. I am not talking about agile auditing. I am not talking about agile projects. I am not talking about fast. In fact, our projects are slower than most on purpose. I'm talking about doing things you've never done before, saying yes that are important things to the company, whether you've done them or not. And frankly, we take our time on projects. We are the opposite of agile auditing at Cooper Tire. We take our time and make sure when we get to the end that we're all aligned, it's of value, it's everything we talked about, et cetera, et cetera. We are not talking about speed here from an agile perspective. We're talking about it at a department level, and we're talking about being relevant as a department, working on what matters most to the company. And I added this line at the bottom. I'm not sure you can be relevant without being agile as a department. Unless you're a perfect economist, unless you can perfectly predict and forecast for the year, because most of us will do annual audit plans, that sort of thing. I know we revisit them, a couple times during the year, this sort of thing. I never revisit my audit plan because I do it once a year. It's approved by the board like the rest of yours, and then it changes from there. We don't do anything formal throughout the year. We're just agile throughout the year, and we'll talk about that. But that's a question that I have, is unless you're an agile department and you're willing to flex and change to what matters most to the company, I would suggest you're gonna lose opportunities to be most relevant. So I'm just looking to see what slides are up. And for those that are in the IIA, right, and you're familiar with the Pulse of Internal Audit, an annual survey, if you will, and I really liked this 2018 Pulse. It was very much aligned with this. I just started talking about this topic out there, and the Pulse came out, and it was great. It was great validation, great support, and it really started with this line, I thought, and I do think this is a big part of it. You simply have to decide and commit to that decision. I think too many of us that have been internal audit our entire careers, we get stuck in the past. We get stuck with what we know, and what we don't know is unauditable. No, it's not. We need to just decide that we're going to be agile as a function, as a leader. We're going to decide to be relevant to the organization, just like any other department in the organization, and we're going to commit to that decision. And it's a very hard decision. It's hard to keep that commitment, but it takes a commitment, in my view. We'll talk about that. This was a line, then we'll get into the top 10. This was a line I saw on LinkedIn. I thought it was great. Now he was talking about changing jobs. I'm not talking about that. But I do think it applies to what I'm talking about, which is when there's a great opportunity that comes across your table, you say yes, and you figure it out later. And there's things that certainly we do as an internal audit team that gives us confidence that we will figure that out later. And I thought the great example for this for me was when in the fall of last year, late fall, early winter, I was in China working on an audit there. And the senior VP who owns the largest business segment at Cooper Tire, so he's about probably 3/4 of our revenue, that sort of thing. He called and said, Tim, I got a business unit, it's not our largest one, but it's very strategic. Can you help them understand the risks within their 5-year strategic plan? Have you done that before? Now, I have done that as a business person, but not as an internal audit leader, and I've never approached that as an internal audit leader. We did have to do that in South Africa when I was there. So I've done that before, but never from an internal audit point of view. And he said, can you do it? I said, absolutely. I hung up the phone, and I said, oh my gosh, how am I going to do that? But that's what we're talking about. How can I say no to an opportunity given to me by the leader of our largest business unit saying, Tim, can you help our 5-year plan of one of my most important business units? Absolutely, I can do that. Hung up the phone, and we figured it out with the diverse team that I'm going to talk about. Okay, so the top 10, I don't think I have time to go over the 10, so I picked 7 or 8 that just to drill into a little bit. We can certainly answer any questions on any of the others that I don't cover. But again, this is meant to be a bit of a guide, a bit of a tactical way as to how I approach this. This is just sharing the way I approach this. It may or may not work at your organizations. I think it does depend if you're more regulated or not. I'm not regulated. We're just tire manufacturing. We're not heavily regulated at all as an internal audit department. I don't have to worry about any of that stuff, for example. I can do whatever I, the CFO, and the board, the audit committee chair, want to do. There's really nobody else we have to ask, right? So I don't have that in my way. So some of these things may or may not work for you. Another warning is I may say something to make a point. I don't mean to offend, or when I say always, I don't really mean always. When I say never, I don't really mean never. But I'll say things a certain way to simply make a point. So forgive me in advance with some of the things. Okay, these are the 10 things that I do. There is an 11th one that I'm adding now, which aligns with what we're here talking about as a conference, technology. There is people, process, and technology. And technology is I used to have one of the top 10. Is it up there? I don't think so anymore. But it's called Automate Everything. And that's my bonus 11, if you will. So that's something that we're doing now. We'll talk about that in just a bit with the first one. But these are the 10 things, the bold I'm going to drill into. And then at the end of when I'm done with going through those bold items, we'll go back to this slide and I'll ask you if you want to ask any questions on any of them that we did not go over. Okay, so any of those that are not bold, we'll go through those at the end. For me, it starts with this. When I was interviewing with Cooper Tire and I was looking for someone that wanted to do this, they were looking for someone that does this. We were a perfect match. Plus, coming back to Ohio was good for me. I am from Cleveland, so all of you Ravens fans out there, I'm sorry, because we're going to win the AFC North this year. We are back in a big way. So I was very glad to get back to Ohio, but I was most glad professionally that somebody wanted to do this. So we didn't launch a project around transformation or anything like that, like we were talking about in the prior session. We just did this, and we got this done in about 3 months. Now at Tyco, we went through a 4-year transformation. Very big company, $40 billion in revenue, massive political. We don't have that situation at Cooper Tire. So the first thing that I asked in my interview, and the first thing I asked our new CFO when he joined in December, just a little bit ago, is, do you see internal audit as a rotation? The answer is yes, I'm done, I'm fine. Because the rest will fall into place, actually. Because if an internal audit is a rotation, if you want people coming in and out, if you want me to develop people that other people want, I can't just work on traditional audit matters. Nobody's going to want those people. No offense. I told you I would say things to make a point. I don't mean it personally, but it's kind of true. You've got to work on very interesting, relevant matters, develop competencies that other people are going to want, because my job, frankly, is to lose all my people in 2-3 year cycles. So that's what drives me as an internal audit leader, to make sure that I'm saying yes to things like that, and we figure out how to do it. Now, it adds a lot of complexities, adds a lot of business chemistry dynamics, team dynamics. You got people going in and out. There's a lot of challenges to this. We'll talk about that just now. But this, for me, is truly number one. The rest of them aren't necessarily in a particular order, but this one is, for me, number one. Internal audit must be a rotational department that is part of a broader rotational, finance development process of some kind.
Tim, quick question. So you said that it's a rotational process, right? So it depends on which industry you're in, obviously,
Yeah.
like you started. So can you tell us, like, what is your, objective decision-making criteria to sort of go in path A versus path B? How does a person who's, in some other industry decide or make that choice?
To come into internal audit,
No, the rotation piece of it.
to leave.
Yes.
To leave. Well, it's a career path. We have, well, hold that thought if you don't mind when we go to the team slide.
Okay,
I'll tell you about some real examples of some of the team members and their paths that are already predetermined. Okay, so any questions on that one? I'll move on, but you can stop me at any time, although I'm being blinded by the light.
Questions, feel free to interject and stop. Yeah, I'll pass on the mic to you guys.
How long? About 2 years. I look for about 2 years. That question was in the prior session. I look for 2 years. I find it very difficult to keep someone, though, that long that is not an auditor. They're coming in from operations or from FP&A or some other finance, more operational role. I think 18 months is the minimum for those kind of people. Try to keep them for 2 years. I really think going through a cycle twice is of big value. You really learn a lot that second time from that first time. So we try to get 2-3 years. Someone that's more traditional is going to be 3 or 4, but at least 18 months for some of those high-performing non-auditors, if you will. ERM is the other one. If I'm going to be relevant, I have to know what matters most to the company. And this, for me, is the best way to know. If there's not an ERM, there must be something like it. There's a strategic planning process. You have to get connected to it. For me, it's about being integral to it, not integrated. Integrated by definition, of course, all you technology folks know this. The word means I have to integrate things that are separate. That's why I say integral. We are integral to the ERM at Cooper Tire. I don't have to be integrated. I'm in it. Get yourself in it. Either the ERM or a strategic planning process of some kind. You have to know what matters most to the company so you can respond. Again, the agile, flexibility, responsiveness as things come up. You have to know if that ask matters at the enterprise level. We work for the board, we work for the executive committee. We have to say yes to things that matter at that level, and frankly, only at that level. We do say no to things that aren't at that level. I had to say no just a few weeks ago. So we have to know what matters most to the highest level people that are representing the shareholders of the company. And the ERM is certainly how I do that. Because of how integrated we are to the ERM, it's one universe. I use the same universe. We don't use anything separate. The score that comes out of the ERM program is half of my score in my annual process. I, of course, add other priority factors to it that the audit committee will care about, like when's the last time you audited this thing, materiality, those kind of things. I do that to manage them so that they're comfortable. We're not getting too far off the reservation. But it's the same risk universe, and again, that score rolls right into my process, which starts when this process ends. Very integrated. I don't do any kind of interviews or surveys separate from this to do my process. I just use this. I can't imagine a better way to get the voice of management, if you will, than from this. I'm not going to ask them separately. Right? So this is very important as well. It's something like this that you can link into.
Sounds like the ERM process must be quite mature then in your organization. Is this something that is possible with less mature ERM?
Absolutely possible, and it wasn't as mature as it was when I arrived, though. So now it's a really good process, and I've never used 50% of my score. I've never used that high of a percentage before. At Tyco, we used about 25%, but we had to build that ERM from almost scratch there. But here we did, just dive in and make it more mature then. But maybe through the percentage that you give it, the weight, maybe that's how you show more and more confidence in the maturity of it. It was 25% when I landed. A year into it, we upped it to 50%. Again, managing the audit committee chair, he was fine with that. I explained why. It's a good process, great voice of management. We do a survey every year as well, that sort of thing. But maybe the weight is a way that you can show confidence. And dive in and just raise your hand and help them get to the next level. This is my risk universe and my annual process to build my audit plan that you all do. So these are, obviously just, by the way, also relevance. Again, when I say never, I don't mean never always. I don't mean to insult, etc. If we want to have a different brand, if we want to show up and be taken differently, if we want to show up differently, then don't use the words that are only internal audit words. Like risk is a word, in my opinion, we use too much. That's a big word in business. To a board member, that's a massive word. To an executive member, massive word. You better mean it when you say that word. I use the word priority. This is not a risk assessment. I don't have a ton of data analytics and auditing behind this thing. This is quite notional. ERM is quite notional, frankly, unless it's super mature and you got a bunch of data and KRIs and all that kind of great stuff behind it. It's notional. It's my opinion. It's a good opinion. There's a lot behind this opinion. It's a priority assessment, as an example. So relevance, we're sounding business. We get it. These are priorities. You can see, I don't know if I have a, is this a, it's not a pointer, I don't think, I'm not sure, maybe. Oh, sorry, I'm not a pointer, I was trying to pointer, sorry. So you can see that I link every piece of the universe. Again, I have the ERM universe coming in. I add to it typical finance processes that we all want to make sure are in our universe, but they may not be in an ERM universe, so I add to that universe. And I link things directly to ERM priorities. Well, ERM risks, certainly in that space, they're called risks. So if it's a tier 1 or 2, I give it a high. If it's a tier 3, a medium, a tier 4 or 5 risk, I give it a low. So I'm showing direct linkage to the ERM universe from my universe. I never have to go back after I build my audit plan. I never have to go back to see if I link to the ERM.
So it's a common library, that's what you mean?
Common library, common language. Very easy to understand. And the board members are involved in ERM, so they get this. Not separately from ERM. I'm integral into the ERM. I am in the ERM. Legal and myself run the ERM. I am at every survey. We're analyzing the survey together. We do about 30 meetings, about half-hour to an hour meetings to make sure we understand the respondents' answers. We joke that we need to get a couch because we're finding that these people just open up to us. It's unbelievable. Very integral. No reason to do anything separate. And the audit committee is quite happy. I have a different definition of independence, by the way. It was mentioned in the previous session as well. You know, we like to say we're independent. We report to the board. I get that. But anyone's independent, in my opinion, if they're willing to speak the truth, there's nothing in the way of them speaking the truth. So why should I do something separate just because I'm independent? The people that run this are also independent. So this is how I show that. This is not the board slide. This is the board slide I show to the audit committee as I show changes and why I'm working on suggesting to work on certain things. And you can see in that upper, the priorities that are popping up at the top there for me. And these are audit priorities. That's all they are. I'm not saying they're risks or audit risks. These are priorities for the internal audit team to work on. I don't necessarily know yet what I'm going to do on these topics. That first one is still hanging out there. Number 1, it's on my audit plan. I've got to do something in July, August, September. I still don't know what we're going to do. But I know we have to do something.
So this is a qualitative, ranking.
Mostly qualitative.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So do you also have a quantitative perspective behind this, priority?
We don't have a
assessment?
lot of key risk indicators and a lot of data analytics behind these at this point. It's quite notional. Okay, but this is the board slide, and you can see that some of those high priorities are popping up year over year because of what's happening on the ERM. That's what's making those high on the list. It's a bit controversial. But I've seen internal audit risk assessments go very well, priority assessments, go very well. They have a very good list of potential projects. This is what I saw when I arrived at Cooper. And then the person declared half of it unauditable. Missed the opportunity to be relevant. And what was remaining was all traditional. Why do we do this? Nothing is unauditable. What does that mean, unauditable? I don't even know what that means personally. This is a commitment you have to make, in my opinion, to be most relevant to the organization. Nothing is unauditable. If that thing comes up and it's a top priority to the company and to you and your job, you have to do something. So I don't know what the term means, but for me, nothing is unauditable. That's a commitment. That's a hard commitment to make. Okay, for me, that's a very important one. What else did I underline here? Oh, I think that's enough. Management requests. I know you all get management requests. Another thing that I'm sure you do when you build your budget and you build your audit plan for the year is you probably put off to the side 10, 20% of your time, of your budget for management requests, right? You don't allocate your entire budget. You don't allocate all your time. You leave a percentage off to the side because again, if you're relevant, you're going to get management requests. So we do that. I put 15, 20% off to the side. So if my budget's $1 million, I put out a plan that's $850,000 or $900,000, for example. So I'm showing that there. In order to do things that we've never done before, to respond to things fairly quickly when you get a phone call, in order to declare that nothing's unauditable, meaning you're willing to work on any topic if it matters to the company, and the audit committee chair is okay with it as well, right? We always make sure of that, depending on the topic. You have to have a very diverse team, and in my opinion, a co-source resource model in order to do that, because you will not have, unless you have a Tyco team of 120 auditors. I don't. I have 9 or 10 FTEs with my co-source model, very small team. We have to be nimble. That co-source piece, which is about 30 to 35% of my total budget, is going to be outsiders that I bring in, SMEs for these topics. When I arrived, it was a very traditional audit team, and I think that's what drove some of the, half of this is unauditable thing, because they only thought what was auditable were things that they've done before. Right? We were encumbered by the past, if you will, and what we've done in our experience. So we had to change the team out. We're on version 3 of my team already. I'm only there 2 years. But it's a very diverse team. We have people, so I'll answer your question. We have Alec, who's about 15 years internal audit, so I got that. He and I got a lot of internal audit experience. We're good there. We have Leah, who's from the local Whirlpool plant, never done accounting, finance, or auditing in her life. When she was interviewing with me, she sat there and said, I don't know why I'm here. I said, well, what are you? She goes, I ask why 5 times. I'm always wondering why things happen the way they do and why people do what they do. That sounds like auditing. She is fantastic 2 years in. Fantastic. She'll go back to operations probably in a year or so. For example, we have Mike, 23 years in IT, never done audit in his life. He came to us from the Cooper Tire IT department. He's doing great. Runs our IT audits. He's about a year and a half in. And we have Matt, who just joined, and he'll be gone in probably a year and a half. I don't think he'll last 2 years. He's a high performer, very high-strung. I don't think he'll want to be in here more than 18 months, and he'll go into finance operations, FP&A, or something like that when he's done with us. But he's been in FP&A. He's been a plant controller somewhere. Very diverse experience there. We have Justin, who just started in May from the Treasury Department, so an inbound rotation. We got him as well. And then we have a guest. We have a couple guests. We're doing guests now. I have that in the lower right. That's just starting. That's a great way also to make sure you have a diverse team, is be willing to have guests. I don't have a formal guest program. It's quite informal. Everyone just knows it's available. We're building our brand. How do you know it's working? People want to be guests. So we have this guy, Apia, he does LIFO accounting 2 weeks a month, and he's with us the other 2 weeks. So that just started. He's doing great.
Any questions so far? I'll be happy to pass over the mic in case somebody has a question. Sure.
Well, I put this up there. I thought maybe I wasn't going to. This was the IAA wasn't sure what I meant here. What do you mean be a consulting firm? We're not consultants. You got to be careful there. Yeah, we are. We're advisors. Look at the bottom. Of course we are. We are consultants. We're advising. Well, we're independent. I think it came up in the prior session. Well, how can you advise? You're not going to be independent. I don't understand that personally. Why am I not going to be independent? I'm telling the truth. I report to the audit committee chair formally. Of course we're still going to be independent, because I'm going to tell the truth based on an advisory project versus a traditional assurance project. We do both. We do provide opinions. Therefore, we are consultants. So I'm just suggesting in the future slides here that we understand our business, our practice, like a consulting practice would. And if you don't understand your business, your function at this level, it's hard to respond. It's hard to be agile. It's hard to flip when you get a phone call and you say, I got to work on that. How do I change things up? Well, you'll have confidence in doing that when you know your business at this level. So every member of our team has a utilization target. We know exactly how many hours we get in a year of audit projects, how many hours they're training, how many hours they're sick. These are days, I'm sorry, not hours. My currency here is days. So it's not meant to be perfect. It's not by the hour or anything. It's directional, right? This is what consulting firms do. Of course, like you do, when we build the audit plan, if you will, it's a list of projects. So those rows are projects. It's a crazy wide spreadsheet like yours, and every project has an estimate number of hours, internal and external, automatically creates an external fee budget, et cetera, et cetera. So I know how many hours I have, and I know how many hours I need. I'm just a not fancy Cleveland guy, so I just call it have versus need. You know, I don't know what else to call it. So we have so many hours we have, so many hours we need, you know, and I can flip. So as things happen during the year, I constantly keep this audit plan going throughout the year. It's already, you know, it's already different than it was when it was initially approved, right? Because we're constantly changing. As my team changed, we're now able to do more internally, by the way. So I'm flipping more hours from external to internal, and I'm freeing up more dollars to do some of these management requests that are coming in right now. So again, we're able to run our business in a very fast, flexible way. That's my definition of agile as a department, not projects, because we know our business at this kind of level. And this model does work. This model has not failed me for 5, 6 years. I know I can do this audit plan if this model is close. Anything that I'm showing here I can share separately. Okay, so we know our business like a consulting firm. What else are consultants good at? Relationship management. If we're going to do things we've never done before, we're going to say yes to things that we've never done before and very much matter to the company, which means they're going to get a lot of visibility at the highest levels. I'm going to need relationships. And the way to really build relationships is to build them outside of audits. It's really hard to build relationships. I know we build relationships during audits, but you're going to build a closer relationship with someone if you take time to build that outside of audit projects. And if you noticed on this, we reserve time for relationship management, so it's a budgeted item, right? So this is a budgeted item for us. And we map the top hundreds of people globally in the company into tiers. So this is another spreadsheet. You can see how we map out all the people that we think we need to know. It's not just the finance people. It's all presidents of businesses, you know, business unit leaders, operational people, et cetera. You know, we map them out. We put them into tiers, you can see. See under the counts 1, 2, 3, that's tier 1, 2, 3. So tier 1 is the CEO and his team. Tier 2 would be someone that reports to one of them. So I'm a tier 2 because I report to CFO, who's a tier 1, for example. So we put them into tiers, and then we assign, every member of my team is assigned to people, you know, in this map. Right, so I do all the tier 1s personally. I want to make sure that I'm with the tier 1s, and then the team does, you know, all the tier 2s really. And they're charged with spending, you know, at least once a quarter or at least twice a year, but I prefer once a quarter, just a half an hour with their people, but it cannot be part of an audit project. You know, just having a meeting, and we don't say what keeps you up at night, what are the key risks. We just do that to understand what matters to them. So tell me about your business or your process or your function, depending on who it is. Tell me about this, you know, your top 5 strategic goals of your process or your, again, whatever it is. What are your top priorities? Top 3 or 5 priorities. We're not asking about your top risks. We're asking about your top priorities because we're business people. And, you know, the conversation will go from there. It builds a great relationship when you're there to learn more about them, right? And they'll get that. You're there to know what's important to them, and so that you can know what matters most to the company. So this is kind of our continuous assessment as well. We always know what's going on because we're always talking to these people, and we record what comes out of these meetings. Okay? We do it for relationship management, but an outcome of it is we have empathy and we know what's going on out there. We don't have to do something separate to do our internal audit assessment. So I talked about how we map these people out. Okay, we're getting through it. Hang with me.
Any questions meanwhile? I thought this relationship management piece outside of the audit projects was a great nugget that came out of this discussion. I'm not sure if any one of you folks in your projects have implemented something similar to that. Maybe you want to discuss that. Yeah.
So I guess my question is more around the sort of the have versus need report that you showed. Just out of curiosity, is your organization using metric streams resource management module to capture some of this?
Oh, we are not at this time.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, keep going.
Did we? No? Now, a lot of us will have small teams. Obviously, if you're in financial services, a lot of times you have larger teams, the regulations that you deal with. I mentioned the size of my team, which is an average, probably if you look at a bell curve, it's your average size team. Your 5, 6 to 10 or 12, something like that, has got the majority of our internal audit functions out there. Integrated assurance is very important. How do you provide? We are not the only providers of assurance. We have to recognize that as well because we're relevant. And we are not the only providers of independent assurance. There's other people that provide assurance that are also willing to tell the truth, and there's nothing in their way from telling the truth, right? There's we call them second lines, third lines. There's some really good second lines of defense out there, and if they're not good enough, help them be better so that you can rely on them, meaning you can report to the board the results of their work as well, potentially. And only if we do this and find other ways, other means of assurance that are provided to the company, we're not the only provider of assurance to the company, right? If we can get comfortable with that and get to the point where we can be comfortable bringing that forward, we'll be able to show more assurance coverage than we are. If we simply show to the audit committee the results of our work, we're not showing them the incomplete story of the confidence they should have, because there's other assurance providers out there. There are. There's other corporate groups that do this. And we'll be most relevant and most agile because we can't do everything. We're only a small group. We can't be the only provider of assurance. We just don't have enough bandwidth, enough budget.
So in other words, assurance is just like InfoSec is a mindset within the organization. It's integral, like you talked about, right?
Yeah, that's one of the easier ones, and we're doing that now. We're building an integrated assurance model with our IT security team. That's one of the easier ones to do with. It makes sense. It's comfortable. There's others, but that's one. Usually in our business of manufacturing, we have sustainability, and safety is a big thing. They tend to do audits, EH&S audits. They tend to be done by a firm who specializes in that, capable. What's the difference? I mean, I'm not going to do safety audits. They can do them much better than we can. So we got to bring them into the fold of our reporting, because that's providing assurance. And the audit committee won't know about it a lot of times unless we tell them. And they're usually very happy. Oh, by the way, there's 50 safety audits that go on every year. Wow, really? So there's actually more assurance going on that the audit committee should probably know about, beyond us. So InfoSec is definitely one. And certainly there's easy ways to do it. I don't have a pointer, sorry, but over to the left of this in the enhanced area, coordination area, you can see they're not quite bold dotted lines, they're little dotted lines. You can't really read it, with apologies, but there are some easy things to do that according to this maturity curve, you can move from left to right, simply by sharing and having single risk populations. We don't have a separate internal audit risk universe that is separate from another universe. We have one universe. Just by sharing and doing and reporting together and doing those kinds of things, we can start moving from left to right. It gets harder the more you get to the right, though, because then you really have to give up. Give up ownership, give up control, and be willing to do that. So when you're doing consolidated issue tracking and joint risk assessments and these kind of things, these are a little more difficult. Maybe it gets more uncomfortable as you go from left to right. Doesn't mean it's not possible. It's just harder. But this is really a way that you can provide a lot more for the money to your organization. And this is how we show it to the audit committee. So again, these are the same, over to the left are the same items in our universe that I mentioned before. This is just another slide of those top priorities that I mentioned before. So these are the priorities I'm telling the committee that we should work on. At Cooper Tire, internal audit does all the SOX testing. So you see IA SOX. And really what my priority assessment is to simply figure out what X's I need in the rightmost column. That's my priority assessment objective. I know I'm doing the SOX testing. I know the SOX testing touches some of these line items, and we're basically suggesting where should we do work beyond SOX testing. As you can probably tell from the math that's behind the scene, I give the most credit when internal audit is doing a non-SOX audit, because we go much deeper. we take months and go really deep. We're doing order to cash right now, very deep process. We're in our second month. It'll probably be a 3-month review. So that's, and you can see in the oversight compliance, that's that second line of defense. There's a couple X's that we're already getting comfortable with. And we're showing this to the committee. This was the first time I did this, including at Tyco. We didn't do this. I tried it here. They loved this slide. They absolutely loved it. It takes risk off their lap when you're talking about strong assurance on top priorities. Okay, so that's an audit committee slide. I think this is the last one I'm diving deep into, and that is we don't focus as much on skills, we focus on competencies. Not to say we don't focus on skills. Skills tend to be technical things, right? But they're a given. They wouldn't be on the team if they didn't have some skills, right? So data analytics and internal audit knowledge, but that's not what's going to get us through. Data analytics will help us for sure. But I'm talking about things like dealing with the things that I have listed here. If we're going to do things we've never done before and you have an audit leader that's saying yes to things that he or she has never done before, not sure how we're going to do it, an audit leader that has, again, I mentioned the first priority is coming up on our schedule. Once Leah gets back from leave, she's going to be in charge of this top priority project. Still don't know what we're going to do. A lot of ambiguity, learning on the fly, imperfect guidance on purpose because I'm developing you because of when you're going to leave. All the things that I've talked about. This is what we focus on. And the bottom I got from maybe LinkedIn or some other place. I thought it was a real good quote. Skills will be replaced, but those human qualities of competencies, it's going to be much harder to automate that. I know AI is here and all that sort of stuff, but that's going to take a lot of time. It'll take a long time to automate competencies. Skills can be automated right now. And it's not for everyone. So that was mentioned in the prior session. So we had a flip of people in the version of the team. It's not for everyone. It's difficult for some.
Any questions, guys, from folks here and there? No? Okay.
Okay, that's the I think 8 that I was going to drill into. I think we're okay on time. I'll just keep going. Some things that I think, some projects, for example, that are agile and/or relevant. So, for example, building your company's operating continuity plan. A lot of folks that I've talked to in our roles as internal audit leaders have said, you can't build the company's business continuity plan. Why can't I? Why can't I help the company? I'm not building it. I'm helping the company build it. Well, you're independent. You can't do that. Well, how can I lose that opportunity? That's a massive value for a manufacturing company, and they want help building their operational continuity plan. Well, then you can never audit it. Okay, if the board wants to audit it, we'll just hire somebody to audit it for $20,000, $30,000. But to build a continuity plan would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Okay, that's business relevance. So we are doing that at Cooper Tire. We're almost done with version 1. Great opportunity. COO loves us. Great opportunity. Talked about that, reducing the uncertainty in a business unit's 5-year plan. We talked about that one already. Helping the company prepare for new customer channels. One of the challenges at Cooper Tire is we're too far removed from all of you, the consumer of tires. Everybody knows Goodyear, Continental, Michelin. Maybe half, probably less than half, maybe a third of you, actually maybe less than a third of you know Cooper Tire. Unless you have a pickup truck or an SUV or maybe a Jeep, or you're in motocross or rally racing, right? Otherwise, you won't know us. So that's our challenge. So we're getting closer to the consumer. We're now having new customers. Customers are who we sell to. We don't sell to you. You're not a customer. You're a consumer. You buy our tire from someone else, not us. But now we have customers that are only, the only thing between us and you now is one party. We used to be 2 or 3 parties, right? So internal audit, we actually read the agreement, the sales guy, because he knew I was in sales for a long time. He brought the contract to me and said, can you read this contract? And we could clearly see that there were things in that contract that we didn't have and we don't do. So we raised our hand and said, we'll help you get these back office things in place so that we can deliver here. What a great opportunity. And we got the Chairman's Award for that. For the first time in my career, internal audit was mentioned on the Chairman's Award, 2018 Chairman Award at Cooper Tire. That's relevance. So that was that bullet there. And then accounts payable. We audited procure to pay last year. I've learned in my experience more in the business roles that when you look at an enterprise-wide process, the first thing to go is to the end of the process. And how is that going? Well, accounts payable, it was not going well. Right? So obviously there's a lot of problems. You know, they're doing a great job, and the reason why it's so messy is everything that's coming to them is a mess, right? They're just the catcher of mess. Right? So they were looking at $1 million solution with somebody, and nobody was getting it done because there's no business case that's possible. Accounts payable people don't make enough money to chop heads to pay for it, right? Nothing's happening. So we worked with IT and devised an $80,000 solution that took care of 90% of their problems. Why can't internal audit do things like that? We just improved that little control environment like crazy by doing something like that. So these are some of the things that we're doing. Challenges, this is hard, not for everyone. And I'm talking about the team, not us in the room here. We're leaders. This is for members of our team. You know, this is not traditional work. This is difficult work. Very ambiguous, you know, a lot of ambiguity, a lot of gray. Some because we don't know what we're doing yet. Some on purpose because we're developing you. We don't want to give you the answer. We want you to come up with the answer, right? Eventually we tell you the answer, but a lot of times they come up with the answer because they know what they're doing.
It's like, you're almost running an experiment and seeing what sticks. And sometimes you fail, sometimes you pass, but you have more wins than losses, I believe.
Yeah.
Approaches.
Well, what we learned with version 1 with the team is the people that are interviewing, the team we have now, I mean, it was funny. It was like you're trying to scare them away. And when I would have the team interview them, they couldn't believe the interview process because the team was trying to scare them away. Because they would say, if you're looking for structure, if you're looking for this, don't work for Tim. You don't want to come here. And I would scare them away when they get to my office for the interview. Because we want people that can deal with those competencies that I talked about. Want ambiguity, want to develop through ambiguity, want to drive creative thinking, solving problems, even though we've never done it before. That's fun. If you're into it, it's fun. If you're not into it, it's really very stressful. Very, very stressful. Projects take longer. This is not agile auditing. This is the opposite. Projects take longer. We do not rush these projects. We've been working on the BCP for almost a year now. But we keep people updated along the way. We've built relationships outside of audits, so we're managing those relationships along the way. You know, they know what we're doing. They know what the next step is, et cetera, et cetera. And the bottom bullet's really important, right? This is all great, but if the CFO and the audit committee chair don't want this, you have no chance. Very little chance. Very, very difficult. I'm very happy that both those parties want this at Cooper Tire. Or I would have a tough time because this is what I enjoy doing. And we changed out CFOs in December. That was a risk for me and what I like doing, right? Because whoever that CFO coming in, if that CFO says, Tim, I just want you doing SOX testing. Well, one, I would probably leave. And two, it would not be a rotational department. It can't be. So again, the first thing I asked him is, do you want internal audit to be rotation? 120%. Okay, I'm good. And diversity is tough. When you have a rotational department going on and people are coming and going, and you're looking for a diverse team, so you're looking for two people that are not alike. And I'm not talking diversity in the political definition. I'm talking diversity from skills, experience, competencies, that definition. I don't care what gender or color they are. It doesn't matter to me. Everybody's yellow to me, and you know what I'm saying? This is about diversity in experience perspective, competency perspective, that sort of thing. Right? But those are different personalities. We got an IT guy that's quite reserved, likes to be at his cube. We got a high-performing operations guy that's 10 years in the Army, very high-strung. He was a captain in the Army, and go, 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 drive, drive, drive. Right? So we actually have Deloitte coming in next week to have a business chemistry session with us. Make sure we understand each other. I'm a pioneer. Mike is a driver. Matt, I'm not sure what he is yet. Right? But we're taking the time to make sure we're an emotionally intelligent team and we know each other, because we're going to need each other to get through this stuff. So it's a challenge, though. When you're not all alike, it's a challenge. We've got introverts, we've got extroverts. Some people like the relationship management stuff like me. Some people hate it, regret it, can't, oh my gosh, do I got to meet with someone today? They just, it makes them sweaty. It makes them very uncomfortable, but we have to do it.
Like you said, it's not for everybody.
It's not for everybody. Right? This was said in the last session. How you know it's working? Your phone is ringing. My phone rang last week from legal. They want us to do something that's, again, related to that customer channel. Great opportunity. We're going to do it. I said yes. My schedule is completely full. I don't know yet how we're going to do it, but because I know the business very well, like a consulting firm, because it's all mapped out, I got Matt redoing the schedule, see if we can fit it in. The model says we can do it. That have versus need model, I plugged in the numbers, says I got room, I can do it, so I know it can happen somehow. So we said yes, we're going to do it. You know, if people want to be in your department, they want to rotate in or be a guest, we have 3 guests now this year. We have more management requests this year than all of last year. We're a calendar year. And somebody talked about post-project surveys. I do think those are good. Do them right away, make them very simple. I think we have 5 questions. We do have the question on value, that sort of thing that you were talking about. Very quick, takes about a minute to do it. Again, because we have relationships that we've built outside of audits, if they're not answering, I usually go to the person and say, hey, do me a favor, can you just take a minute and do this? Yeah, Tim, because I've helped them, so they're helping me. That's relationships. So we have a 3.8 out of 4 going so far this year. The CEO thinks our ratings are too high. Says, people shouldn't like audit that much. Oh, okay. I think it can be and, not or. I'm an and believer. My life motto is why and, why or when it can be and. I don't see why you can't be independent and help. You can't be internal audit and get 3.8s. Why not? And nomination, Chairman's Award. I just can't believe that. That's fantastic. Any of the 10 that we didn't cover you want to talk about?
Yeah, any questions? You got like
I didn't talk about 9 or 10.
10 minutes.
I think is the only ones, 9 or 10.
Pass on the mic.
9 or 10 are the only ones we didn't do.
Anybody got any questions? Well, this is the first time I've seen a great, sexy presentation for the internal audit function. Usually it's like dull and boring. Sorry to break it to you guys, but this was something very unconventional, from what I've seen over the years. I've been with the firm for the past 8 years, and this is like very refreshing to see. But like you said, it's not for everybody, and you have to sort of see what your business is and then tailor it to your program and your skill set and your vision, right? Like he has his own vision, so keep that in mind. Yeah, we have like 5 minutes. Any questions, guys? Yeah.
And I have just one more slide I'm going to close you with when we're done with questions.
Just curious, given the agile, the different aspects of agile you're talking about, how agile is your reporting?
More agile now because of the CFO flip. Is it recording me now? Actually, what really helped with the previous CFO is she was also an audit committee chair at other companies. And I've never had that before where the CFO is a board member elsewhere, audit committee chair elsewhere. Highly recommended. It was fantastic because she has that perspective. The new CFO, so we're going to go back to what I'm more comfortable doing, where if it's an assurance project, it gets a rated audit report. If it's an assurance project from the pre-approved audit plan, not a management request. If it's a management request, not rated, and it's not the same template, it's on purpose a different look. Usually PowerPoint-based summary with supplemental deliverables will go to the client directly, whether it's spreadsheets or data analytics or whatever it is. But those are on purpose PowerPoint-based deliverables that are executive summary, if you will, and not rated. The previous CFO liked them all on the one format. So we always know when we're getting something from internal audit, it looks like this. But the problem is it's hard to communicate that this is assurance, this is not. So we're back to 2 main types of deliverables. Very flexible, especially on the non-audit plan items.
So each of them still is associated with a deliverable. Do you see some opportunities to not have a deliverable on each of the engagement, but instead do some, aggregated value statement, something like that?
No, I believe, and it comes from my consulting days in the 90s, I believe a project is defined. If you're using a chunk of my resources, I have to tell the audit committee, I work for them. They approve the budget, so if you're going to use a chunk of my budget, I have to tell them what we did with it. And people I'm finding, again, relationship management's important. It takes a little time, a little brand time out there, a little marketing, let's say it, a little marketing out there. People are okay with that once they develop that trust with you. So no, I provide, but we used to provide audit reports to the audit committee. I don't anymore. I provide a 1-page summary. That's it. That's all they get.
Great, thank you.
But every internal audit use of resource, any use of internal audit resources, there has to be a deliverable as to this is what we did. Yeah. And then just last, if I can close, I don't have time. Usually have some polling going on with this, but if you think about leaders out there that you look up to, it could be a team, a brand, or a person. And these may be some of the qualities that you're thinking of when you think of that person or that brand or that team or that company, whatever it is. It's a leading something. And I would just suggest that this internal audit function is a leadership opportunity to demonstrate these kind of qualities, to people. And then again, people will want to join your function. Some people will want to leave your function because they just don't want to do this sort of thing. It's harder, or whatever the reason is. But these are some of the things that we've talked about that I think I get very frustrated when internal audit leaders, and it's not a lot of them, but it's some, well, we're not leaders, we're internal audit. Or we're not whatever it is, we're internal audit. No, that's not acceptable. We are internal audit, and we can be leaders. We can be the example. We have to walk the walk. We can't just talk and find other people, right? So I'm just suggesting it's an opportunity because you're demonstrating these kind of qualities. Okay, now I'm done.